Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity to be with you all today. It's a great privilege to be here and sharing this panel with such good friends and esteemed colleagues. So Sanjay has given me some prompts to structure my contribution around, which I'll just get to them, sorry, which are really interesting. Thank you, Sanjay, because they give me an opportunity to reflect back at quite a personal level on my journey as a blind academic over the past embarrassingly long time. I think it was mentioned in my introduction that I started in 1990, which actually was quite a different era. And I think Michael has captured some of that in his talk. So the first point Sanjay mentioned was to talk about how I'd addressed concerns about my capacity to manage and teach large batches of students. And I think the main concern about this, actually, that I've had to address was concerns that have come from myself rather than the concerns that have come from others. And so when I started teaching in 1990, I had a compulsory course to teach. I had property law, where there were about 200 students in a class. And I was extremely nervous. I could see a little bit, but not very much. I didn't use a cane or a guide dog at that point, but I probably should have done. I lost my sight progressively. And I could just about see enough to read some very large print words, but reading lecture notes was very stressful. So I found the whole experience of lecturing very stressful and difficult at that time. And I think it was about 3 lectures in, at the end of that lecture, some of the really conscientious students who sat at the front row, mature students, told me after the class that they were getting distracted because some of the other students were throwing paper aeroplanes in the back of the room. And I wasn't aware of it because I couldn't see this going on, so I wasn't picking it up during the class. So I thought about this and I got more and more angry, partly because they were taking advantage of the other students and distracting the other students. And I have found that very motivating and very empowering, not just challenging things that are going on that are unfair for me, but that are creating unfairness for others. So in the next lecture, I was able to say that I'd found out what was going on, and I was very disappointed about it because lectures weren't compulsory. They didn't need to come. They could play paper aeroplanes in the park. They were distracting the other students, and it was also taking advantage of the fact that I couldn't see. And actually, I was on that occasion, one of the other students in the class who happened to be a professional rugby league player, rugby league is very big in Yorkshire, came up to me at the end of the class and said, "You never need to worry about that again, because I've told them I'll smash their heads in if they ever do it again." Which was slightly an aggressive approach, but it made me chuckle. And I think it also gave me a reason to think, actually, it's no good trying to disguise the fact that I can't see or just get by and hoping people won't notice. I really need to be very honest and open with the students about the fact that I can't see and the impact that has on my teaching, and to ask them for their cooperation. And that's actually been a huge, it's confidence giving, but it's also worked really well. The students have been incredibly respectful and positive about that, and seem to, respond to it really well. So that's worked. So the next challenge, accessing and producing academic content. So obviously, as a blind person, accessing printed material is very difficult. And certainly in 1990, nearly all the material I needed to read was in print. At that point, computers were only just beginning to take hold. And so my main means of reading then was by audio tape, cassette tape. And obviously I had to wait. There was quite a long delay while somebody taped the books. Tapes would break. It was quite hard work and it required a lot of organisation. So I chose the university I studied at and then that I returned to as an academic because it had a transcription centre where there were 2 paid organisers who took on the burden of all that time-consuming task of organising volunteers to put things onto tape. And that's still going, that transcription centre in Leeds. It was started by some blind academics in the 1980s. And it's still going, but it's been flexible about the outputs it produces. So it's moved now away from audio cassette. Nobody really wants audio cassette anymore. So now its main work is making things accessible in electronic format and large print. And the other type of support I was able to access was one that came from the government. We call it our Access to Work scheme, and that's a grant that is paid to disabled employees directly to cover the costs, extra disability related costs associated with work. And we've got this assumption in the UK, that's traditionally been quite generous, that funding. So I've used it to pay for a personal assistant, and I did that from my early years at work. And the assistant has read things to me live, supported with materials that are not accessible in other ways, but also been able to help with tasks like referencing, where actually working out whether, what format a reference is in, is there italics in the right place? Have things gone a bit wild and there's underlining everywhere where there shouldn't be? It's very helpful to have a sighted person to do that. So computers have made life an awful lot easier for me and for many other blind people as well. And being able to read so many documents that are in electronic format is much quicker than having to wait for them to be in tape, and it's safer. The problems haven't all gone away. There is still quite a lot of inaccessible content out there. And also just setting up computers in a way, because we're so dependent on them. I've currently got a new machine which is having teething troubles, and it can be, you realise how lost you are without your computer. I'm sure that's the case for everybody, but actually if you can't read without it, it makes life very difficult. And this move to online teaching, online meetings, in some ways has had advantages, but there are also accessibility related challenges around some of those too. Then the next challenge was to think about challenges that have come with discharging the administrative duties associated with the job. And I think with this one, one of the things, I've been very lucky to have supportive managers over my career. And one of the points about administrative duties is that not all of them may be ones that everybody needs to do. So I tried to do some invigilation duties early on because we were all expected to in those days. That was really extremely difficult, and I had to virtually delegate it all to my assistant. So there was just no point me doing that. So there's been some flexibility about which ones I do. And I think we all have some choices about which ones we take on. I've chosen ones that interest me, which tend to be ones that relate to increasing equality and inclusion. And yes, I think, again, being open about what adjustments you need. which can sometimes be challenging in itself, but that's really important. And if I don't do that, I feel like I really have myself to blame. And yes, I think just on the point about working on disability inclusiveness, so that's the end of the, the prompts that Sanjay gave me. But I want to take that a little bit further, that point about choosing to work on issues relating to equality and inclusion. So I did that with my own career. So my research and teaching originally focused on property law for 10 years. And then I managed to shift over towards disability and equality, which was fantastic because it was really, I was much more interested in that area than I was in property law, interesting though property law can sometimes be. And I think one of the things I feel we still need to do more of is look at disability inclusiveness as well as other types of inclusiveness, and there's a lot of focus on race at the moment in the curriculum. And Michael and Peter have talked quite a lot about disability law and the way it's more and more prevalent, it's being taught more and more, but there's still very little of it when compared with many other subjects. And it's still got quite a low profile in many textbooks on other areas of law, even human rights core textbooks, and things like medical law, where you'd expect disability to feature quite highly. There's often very little from a disability critique. Yes, I'll stop there. That's my 10 minutes. Thank you very much.